What's up, everybody? Max Whitman here, you there, welcoming you to our Friday night edition of the Book It Better Wrestling Show. It is 10:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast of the United States of America. I'm very, very late with this episode. It'll be going up probably by the time it goes up, probably close to midnight, maybe about 11:30. It's about 70 degrees here. Did I just burp into the microphone? I don't know if you can hear that or not, but I just burped into the microphone, I think. It's about 70 degrees here today. It was gorgeous out. I was going to get up early and get this recording up. Ended up going out, and so it's going up real late today. But it is going up. This is a special edition of the Book It Better Let's Learn series. This was actually specifically requested. This topic was specifically requested by a commenter. And so tonight we're going to be going over road agent notes. What are road agent notes? What do they do? How do you use them? Which ones do you use for what kind of worker? The whole shebang. So I do have up here, I have my WWF Classic save up. We're not going to be using it too much. We'll be mostly working over here in our planning sheet that we had shown a little earlier. I have some basic match aims described here that we'll talk about. So we'll talk about mostly match aims as they are typically the more important ones, I guess, of the road agent notes. But we'll also get into some of the road agent notes in the game. Let's go, can I access, if I pre-book, can I access road agent things here? Let's see, if I just do a 1 versus 1, no, so I can't, match details maybe? Match finish, no, so I can't do road agent notes. So, let's do this. Let's just advance to our next show. It's Monday Night Raw. We don't have to book anything, but I need to be able to pull up a match. I need to be able to pull up a match to show the rest of the road agent notes. While we're waiting for this to load up, though, let's talk about 200 subscribers. So we've hit the 200 subscriber mark, and that means we will be doing our Fire Pro tournament. I got about 80 plus names right now that I've got listed up. We're going to be knocking that down to 64. I'm actually really excited about doing this because we're going to pull out like all the stops, and I want to make it like a I'm talking like I want to get like a green screen in here, get a video camera, and do like a full-on panel discussion about every match on the first round, and then kind of continue to do that as the tournament rolls on. Mostly like a satirical kind of thing. Do we have, are we here on our, yeah, tonight, okay. So mostly kind of like a satirical thing, not taking ourselves too seriously, but I really love to have all four of the Book It Better team members here. It's probably only going to be 3. I know Professor's definitely in for it. Kato will probably make an appearance. He's only right around the corner. But the superstar who you've probably only heard if you've listened to the 4 podcast episodes we did, he's about 250 miles away. So if he can get here, it'd be a miracle. But we'd love to have him here, obviously. But it'll at least be Professor and I. Ideally, Kato will be here too. Hopefully, we can convince we can get the superstar on a bus and get him down here. But what I really want to get into, let's kind of run through some of our road agent notes. And, I'm sorry, before we get into that, so to finish that thought, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here. So to finish that thought, we'll kind of do like a whole big thing like they do on ESPN, introducing the matches and the seeds and all that. And then I'll put the bracket out to you guys. You guys can fill out your brackets, send them back in. I'll explain how the points work. You fill out your brackets, send them in, and whoever earns the most points throughout the brackets is going to win $50. You're going to win a $50 gift card to either Amazon.com or the WWE shop. So one of the two. I don't know if I'll just maybe just leave it up to you guys, which y'all you can request either $50 Amazon or $50 to the shop, but you can win $50. $50 is $50, whether it's WWE shop or Amazon. I don't care. But it's a real giveaway that we're doing. So I'm actually really excited for that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it. We're not going to take it too seriously, but I think it'll be kind of a neat thing to do. So that said, we are at Monday Night Raw, so we'll kind of jump into kind of booking that show. We'll start going over it. What I want to do is I want to start by saying anytime I do a Let's Learn, I'm kind of assuming that the listener has never played TEW before. So let's get into first, what is a road agent note? What does it do? So a road agent note is basically just, we'll call them extras, just little extras that you can pop into the match to give the match, just to kind of give the match specific guidance on what you want it to be. Do you want the guys to focus on high spots? Do you want the guys to focus on just do you want a Mick Foley car accident match? You can specify that here. Do you want guys to focus on, making it appear super epic? You can do that. All the way down to focusing on keeping a certain worker strong, or keeping a certain worker's involvement minimal, so they're not contributing all that much to the match. We'll get into why you might want to do all those things shortly. But basically, a road agent note is just a note for the match. It's just giving you a little bit more control. It's you telling the workers in the match what you want from that match. Do you want it to end by pinfall? Do you want it to end by submission? Do you want it to end by countout? That's setting all those things. They're basically extras that you don't have to touch. You can simply choose, a winner and a loser and be done with it. You don't have to touch any of the road agent notes, but they do have a significant impact on the show, and they can raise or lower match grades accordingly. And there are some that are more important than others, and we'll focus on them today. Admittedly, I don't use a lot of these road agent notes. I don't even use. I do know what they do, but I don't really use a lot of them. There's about 5 or 6 core road agent notes that I use heavily, and we'll get into those, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll start just by the match aims, because those seems to be the one that most people have the least understanding on what they do. So we'll start out. Your basic match aim is regular. This is the default. You're going to use this one, and you can see it's written right here. You're going to use this one when you're not sure which aim you want to choose, and you don't want to experiment with it and get dinged. This is what I use 99% of the time. 99% of my matches, I just go regular booking. It's basically the catch-all, right? If you got guys who are good workers, they're going to have a good match with regular. If you have guys who aren't a good match, they're probably not going to have a good match with regular. It's basically just, it's not adding or subtracting anything from the match. It's just taking the workers, core attributes and ratings and putting them in the formula and putting out a match. This is what you will use most of the time. It's what I use most of the time, and it's generally the safest bet. This is what I used for my WrestleMania main event. If you just watched WrestleMania on Wednesday, I used regular booking for Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, and the match scored a 99. So it's certainly possible to score very, very high with regular. Work the crowd is the other one that you'll use fairly often, but not really. And basically all this is when you have a super cold crowd and you want to just warm them up a little bit. You might use this on your pre-show. You might use this on your opening match. If you don't want to open with a super, super hot match, you might open with a work the crowd. Calm the crowd does exactly what it says it does. Also, for a minute, let's just talk about work the crowd. I'm sorry, I don't want to. What it's going to do, though, when you work the crowd, it's just supposed to warm them up. You're going to get a slightly lower grade on that match. Keep that in mind. It's basically telling your workers not to go 100%. All right, they're just there. They're gonna work the crowd a little. They might interact with the fans. Take it slow. You're just starting to warm them up. Welcome them to the show. So your match might take a little bit of a hit, but you're kind of asking the match to take a little bit of a hit. It's sort of what you want, is to work the crowd. You don't want to get them all hyped up because you don't want to tire them out, leading into the more important matches on your card. You want them warmed up but not tired, which brings us to calm the crowd. Very similar effect. It's going to affect the match rating, but it's also going to calm them down after a hot start. So let's say you start the show off really, really hot. You don't want to continue to build heat if you have Perfect Show Theory on. If you don't have Perfect Show Theory on, don't worry about that. Just build the hottest show you can. But if you have the Perfect Show Theory on, Perfect Show Theory tries to simulate real life. It tries to simulate the fact that if a show is 4 hours of non-stop action, by the time you get to that 4th hour, your crowd is going to be burned out. They're going to be tired. WrestleMania is a perfect example of this. I'm going to WrestleMania this year, and one of the things I'm least looking forward to is just how long WrestleMania actually is. It's an endurance test. Now imagine if every single match on that card was a through-the-roof barn burner of a match. You'd be exhausted at the end of a 7-hour show, even more so than you already are. That's where calm the crowd comes in. This is your piss break, road agent note. It basically is when your crowd gets a chance to head to the bathroom or go get a hot dog or some nachos or something. You might want to put this one before your semi-main event. So this might want to be your third from last match. It brings the crowd back down. Then your semi-main event can bring them back up a little bit, and your main event can go crazy over the top and send them home happy. Lift the crowd, I don't really use this one all that much. I've never used it, frankly. Basically, it's sort of if you effed up with your booking, and now you need to bring the crowd back. I don't really know why I'd ever need to do this. I don't know. But it basically is if the show is... It's sort of if you've calmed them or you screwed them up and you've kind of lost the crowd a little bit, this will lift them back, into the show. But the problem with that is you won't know you jacked up your booking, until the show is already running. Because if you F it up and you notice it before the show goes on, you just change it, right? So I don't really know. I mean, by the time you would notice that you F'd up, it's already too late to put this in. So I don't really know exactly why you would use lift the crowd. A wild brawl. So this is basically, the match needs to be shorter than 15 minutes, and it is exactly what it says it is. So if you had The Rock versus Stone Cold, you make them do a wild brawl, and it's two workers who have good stamina, and they're just going to go non-stop, all out, the whole time, the whole match. Has to be less than 15 minutes because guys get tired too quickly. And you must have guys with high stamina. Remember that. Check their stamina. It doesn't matter how good their brawling skills are. If they don't have high enough stamina to pull it off, it's going to suck. Same thing with stamina. If they don't have if they don't have a high brawl stat, they can't brawl, right? It would be like putting Mabel versus Mo in a technical masterclass. These guys aren't technical wrestlers, right? You want this for your brawling. Basically what it does is it tells the workers to highlight their brawling ability and focus less on things that they might not be quite as good as. If you have a guy who can only brawl, a guy like Mick Foley, not to take anything away from Mick, but a guy like Mick Foley who's a puncher, he's a brawler, this is where he's going to shine. His matches will be, if you got Mick Foley versus Terry Funk, this might be the way you want to go. Or Car Crash down here, but we'll get to that. Technical high spots. High spots is what it is. You got guys with high aerial skills, put them in here. Flashiness and aerial stats are the ones that are most affected by this. And you must precede this with a match that has warmed up the crowd. So you don't just want to open up a cold crowd with a high spots match. They're not going to dig it. If you warm them up by having a good match or using the work the crowd note, then you can go with your high spots match. Jeff Hardy, obviously. Those are the kind of guys that should be putting in something like this. A technical masterclass. I've yet to have a lot of success with technical masterclass. So your crowd is cold. So you want to use this if your crowd is cold, the match before you use calm the crowd, or this is the first segment of more than 6 minutes on your card. If you've got workers with high chain wrestling, mat wrestling, and basics, they can put on a fantastic bout. Pure, realism, traditional, and hyper real like this match type. I like to do these as over 20-minute contest and add the slow build note. We'll talk about slow build. That's one that I use a lot. But in the WWF, you're not really going to get great ratings with this one. This is more of a New Japan kind of thing, or a realism-based product. For the record, the stuff that I'm reading here, I did not write this. So this was, when I downloaded this planning sheet, this was included. So for the record, a lot of this I'm just going to be reading. I did not write this. So like I said, I almost never use comedy. I very rarely use technical masterclass. Lift the crowd I never use. Well, this isn't a lot of this is not from my personal experience with this. Comedy matches, think Santino Marella. And it works at calming the crowd, except it doesn't bring them down as much. It sort of pauses them to avoid the burnout. It needs workers, obviously, who have good comedy performance. They also should not have a realistic... Basically, if you've got Goldust versus Santino, you're using comedy. Comedy is exactly what it says it is. Storytelling here. Now, keep an eye out, because some products mandate at least one storytelling match. And I think a lot of people sometimes misunderstand what storytelling matches are. Storytelling tells your workers to keep it simple. Okay? They're not going to give their best effort in the ring, so your grade is not going to be very high on this. You don't want your workers taking it easy for the main event of your pay-per-view, so you don't want to do a storytelling match in your main event. It's going to get dinged. I use this usually. I didn't write this, but this is exactly how I use it. It's a good TV mid-card match note, and it has no chance of burning out your crowd. So if you're worried that you've had heat, you can throw in a storytelling match there. It basically is just, it's telling your workers, keep it simple, tell a good story in the ring. It does not equate to a storyline. Don't misunderstand that. Don't mistake storytelling with storylines. They have nothing to do with each other. Okay? You don't need... This is strictly talking about telling a story inside the ring. Okay? So it's telling the workers, hey, tell a story about, go out in the ring, and I want the story of this match to be Eddie Guerrero working on the bigger man, John Cena, working his legs. So Eddie Guerrero is going to focus on the legs of John Cena. That's the story. The story is, or it's big man versus small man, right? It's the Big Show versus Rey Mysterio. And the match might not be that good, but you're telling a story of David versus Goliath. It's not a storyline. So you don't have to have a storyline for storytelling. And if your match is a storyline match, you don't have to have it be a storytelling match. This is talking about inside the ring. Mayhem, straight up WCW 2000 Vince Russo stuff. Terrible for promotions like New Japan. Never a main event quality bout. But not bad for, like, WCW 2000, if you're running a Crash TV kind of thing. I never use Mayhem. Almost never. Actually, never. I don't think I've ever selected Mayhem, except in maybe once or twice in Vinny's World when I was just trying to get a crappy rating. Car Crash. This is your Mick Foley match. Think Mick Foley. It's ECW. Think ECW with high incident bouts or Wrestling Society X stuff. Some shit's gonna explode when you get superplexed into it from the top of a balcony. Depending on your product, it could main event. If you got ECW, it could main event. But think Mick Foley, Terry Funk, Cactus Jack kind of stuff. There might be some fireballs as something's gonna explode. You got thumbtacks, the whole deal. That's Car Crash. Do keep an eye on Car Crash because some promotions do require a Car Crash match. They require either a car crash or a wild brawl. They tend to go hand in hand. So you'll find that that some programs, some products require a wild brawl, high spots, or a car crash, as well as a storytelling match. These last four are similar. Okay, they're very close. They're different, but they're very close. Steal the Show is main eventing on some products. The crowd shouldn't be dead, but they also shouldn't have been hot for too many segments before this. And the important attributes are flashiness, consistency, and stamina. Steal the show is basically telling two workers to go out and do everything they can to steal the show, obviously. I believe steal the show, and we'll check. Let me check right now, actually. I believe steal the show also automatically... I think it automatically... it automatically puts the all-out road agent note as well. I'll pick two guys here. Yeah, you can go, you can go there. Cool. Alright, let's do the road agent notes here. I believe if we do steal the show, yeah, all-out match is automatically used. It does not need to be manually added. So if you do steal the show, you're automatically telling your workers to go all out with it and give 100% everything they have. So let's look at the all-out road note. Match style, all out. This specifies that the workers should go flat out to have the most exciting, jaw-dropping match they possibly can. It's useful if you just want the workers to try and get the best rating possible, but it's more physically intensive in terms of stamina and injury risk. Will severely penalize workers who are not able to produce good quality in-ring performance and falls apart if the match goes too long, over 20 minutes. So there are some downsides to using Steal the Show. You must be less than 20 minutes because you get severe penalties, and you must have good in-ring workers. You need to have Shawn Michaels and Chris Benoit, or Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker to steal the show. Otherwise, you're gonna screw yourself with that one. So keep that in mind. Spectacle. You need to have a warm crowd, but not buzzing yet, as this can get them buzzing. This is a high risk-reward aim. If this is your main event, your guys should have very high psychology and be uber over. This can main event, and these matches cannot be under 15 minutes without getting heavily dinged. They should essentially be 20 minutes plus to get the full potential out of it. Good versus great, excellent, great versus great, excellent. Okay? Basically what you're saying is, this is your Rock versus John Cena. This is your Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25, right? This is Rock versus Hogan. Okay, it's a spectacle match. Guys have to have high psychology. They got to be able to put on a long match and high stamina, and they need to be super over or it's going to fall apart. What you're basically telling your crowd is, this is huge, right? When you give them that spectacle, you're telling them this is a spectacle. This is enormous, right? And so the guys that are in it need to be larger-than-life guys. Again, spectacle is not one that I use very often, and frankly, I don't use it often just because the guys that you have to use to get this kind of in this kind of thing can generally put on a 90 plus rated match just with a regular note. I honestly find that these last four, I find that I almost never use them just because, I don't know, I never really saw the true effect. Frankly, I always found like I was able to get the most out of regular match ratings anyway, and so I very rarely ever use them. I use the other road agent notes that we'll talk about after this much more often than I use certainly these four and really any of these. Epic is very similar. It can main event needs two high psychology workers who have high top row stats. Meaning chain and mat wrestling specifically. The more high top row stats, the better the chances. So that's basically their in-ring work. They also need high basics. An excellent ring worker versus excellent ring worker. So Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit versus Dean Malenko. If you had built Dean Malenko into a superstar, Epic is basically the difference between Epic and Spectacle is focusing more on the overness of the workers and how popular they are and how big a name they are. Epic is focusing more on how good they are in the ring. Kurt Angle versus a Chris Benoit or somebody like that. That's the only difference between these two, really. Everything else pretty much needs to be identical in terms of psychology. But Spectacle is psychology and popularity. Epic is psychology and in-ring ability. Don't forget that. Spectacle, psychology, popularity, epic, psychology, in-ring ability. Once in a lifetime, I've never used this one, and apparently neither had the creator of this when he wrote this. So he just says he would aim to have the crowd calmed, then warmed up with a work the crowd or technical masterclass, and make sure your two competitors are over. Long story short, guys, match aims. Some of the products require storytelling, and then either a wild brawl, high spots, or car crash. Keep an eye on that. If your product requires that, know what the difference is between them, as was explained. Wild brawl is just a big brawl. High spots for guys like Jeff Hardy. Car crash, guys like Mick Foley. Right? The only ones that I really use here, ever, are regular. Occasionally, I will use storytelling. Excuse me. And I've done work the crowd before. But generally, it's regular and storytelling. Those are the two that I work. I have tried Epic. I failed miserably. I've tried Steal the Show. Failed miserably. But long story short, those are the main ones. Storytelling and regular are really the two main ones. Don't let all this confuse you. You can score a 99 or 100 just by using regular match aim. Okay? The more important road notes are these. The individual focuses. Right? Obviously, your winner and loser. Your individual focuses, these are important. Domination. It specifies that a certain worker should dominate the match at the expense of everybody else. It works if you're trying to get somebody over and are you willing to sacrifice another worker's popularity in the process. The match has to be kind of short for this. Again, I always find that it dings the match grade-wise. And it makes sense. If you got a guy just dominate it, that kind of gets boring after a while. But you want to be a shorter match. And workers who lack charisma get much less of a boost for dominating and can even lose popularity as the crowd turns against them. So they have to have the charisma to keep the crowd on their side while they're dominating. You're also going to... it's definitely going to boost the dominating guy's popularity up, but it's going to severely hurt the guy who's getting dominated. So this is basically like a Big Show versus a jobber kind of thing. Keep strong. I use this one a lot. It specifies that a certain worker should be made to look particularly good even though they're not winning the match. What you're going to use this for most often, keeping in mind, it does ding the grade, right? So if you're going to keep somebody strong, it does ding the match grade. It prevents them from going, from putting on their best show. But this is a good way to convince someone to take a loss. I use this one a lot if somebody is going to give me a hard time about eating a pin. I choose to keep them strong. And usually, as long as the popularities are close, let's say a wrestler, worker 1 has an 80 popularity, and wrestler 2 is a 67, right? Wrestler 1 might complain if he's taking a clean pin, because he's more popular than that guy, and he sees that it would hurt his career, whatever. Generally, you can keep wrestler 1 strong, and he'll be willing to take that pin. So it's basically, he's going to look particularly good in this match, but he's still going to lose. But his popular, the effect that it has on the game is the loser's popularity will be less affected, but the winner's popularity is also less affected. So you may only gain 1 or 2 popularity points, and you may only lose 1 or 2 popularity points. So generally, if you can do a match without this, generally that's advisable. Just because I prefer high match grades. But if you really need a guy to take an L, and you don't want to piss him off, and he doesn't want to take the L, you might be able to keep him strong and have him accept that. It might not. If one guy's a 90 and the other guy's a 40, you can keep him strong all you want. He ain't taking that L. Protect. This is if you have a guy who's a little weaker in the ring, in-ring ability-wise, and it basically just tells the other wrestlers to protect him. It tells the other wrestlers, hey, hide this guy a little bit, hide the fact that he's got flaws, his abilities aren't as high as yours, and work around him, essentially. It's good for a match where you might have Sid Vicious in there with Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho, where Michaels and Jericho, at least in this save, are 2 fantastic in-ring workers, and you've got Sid Vicious in there, who's a crap in-ring worker, but looks really good. And you're basically telling Michaels and Jericho, hey, work around this guy, make him look good. Hide the fact that he's not as good. It will, let's see, yeah. So it specifies that a worker's flaw should be hidden as much as possible, and that he should come out of the match looking as good as possible. It's useful if you're trying to get somebody over whose in-ring skills are not particularly good, like we talked about, and also if you're trying to talk somebody into taking a loss, just like Keep Strong. Using this note gives a large boost to a worker if his in-ring performance is weak, gives a minor boost to his overall performance, severely limits his potential popularity gains and losses, and reduces the effect of stamina. So, your match grade in this case is going to be good, right? You're going to get a match grade because, in our scenario, Jericho and HBK will hide the fact that Sid's not a great worker. But the crowd will notice that a little bit, and it's going to limit his popularity gain and loss. So basically, you are sacrificing popularity gain for a good match rating, essentially is what's happening here. Keep it simple, exactly what it sounds like. Keep it simple. They're going to simple spots. It keeps them healthy. It limits the stamina effect, but it's also going to limit what kind of grade they can get, essentially. Burial is sort of like domination, except rather than making one worker... the goal of dominate is to make one worker look really good. The goal of burial is to make one worker look really bad. You generally don't want to do this unless you're pissed at a guy and you're going to fire him anyway, and you just want to embarrass him out there. In other words, it makes it very important. It's useful if you want to intentionally hurt someone's popularity. It results in an automatic, sizable popularity penalty. I thought about doing this to Bret Hart before he left, and I arguably should have, because he quit when he was the champion. I arguably should have buried him before he went to WCW. I chose not to, because I was the bigger man. But that's really the only time you want to use burial. It's very generally not advisable to sabotage your own workers. But you could do this, just if you're pissed at somebody. Our next grouping here is match style, and we will talk about all of these, and what it is. It's just, there's 6 of them here. So, open match. Open match means it's back and forth. It means everyone's getting an equal amount of offense. So, if you have Shawn Michaels versus an enhancement talent, and you do open match, it means that HBK is going to let that enhancement talent get a couple shots in. He's going to win the match, but he's going to let that enhancement talent get an equal amount of offense. Call it in, basically, this is open match. Honestly, I use open match for everything. Everything. I almost never do domination. I almost never do I never do burials. I always do an open match. I just find that it gives the best grades. And honestly, those are the kind of matches I enjoy watching. I don't like watching one guy dominate a match. Call it in the ring and script. It's basically what they are. Basically, call it in the ring tells the workers, just go over the finish backstage and figure the rest out in the ring. Script tells them, talk about everything from start to finish. If you're going to call it in the ring, calling it in the ring will give you a way better grade if your workers have high psychology. Now, you can get away with it if, like, I'll use my Shawn Michaels Undertaker match at WrestleMania 11. HBK's psychology is a 92, I'm sorry. The Undertaker is a 74. So generally, if the psychology is under an 80, I'm scripting the match. If it's over an 80, I'll call it in the ring. Both workers. If both workers are over 80, I call it in the ring. If both workers are under an 80, I script it. Generally. Now, in the case of HBK and Taker, HBK's was so high that I called it in the ring anyway, even though The Undertaker lacks a little bit of psychology, because I knew that Shawn Michaels being so high, he would call the whole match essentially, and The Undertaker just had to follow. And that's what happened. So basically, you would ideally, if you're going to call it in the ring, you ideally want both workers to be high psychology guys. But if you have one worker who's significantly high in psychology, then that's usually enough to get a good grade with that. Calling it in the ring will give you a better grade if you've got high psychology. If you've got low psychology, go ahead and script it. Simple as that. And the reason is, if you call it in the ring, the guys can improvise, and they can feed off what the crowd is reacting to, and they can pick up on the little psychological, instincts there and use it to their advantage. If you script them, they can't do that. They're not reacting to the crowd at all. They planned a match, and they're going to do it. If the crowd doesn't like it, they're going to keep getting it. If the crowd loves it, they might move away from something that the crowd was really enjoying because it wasn't in the script, right? Simple as that. All-out match, we talked about that. Slow build. This is the other one that I use. So for my main events with high psychology guys, I go open match, call it in the ring, slow build. To me, that's like the bread and butter. Open match, call it in the ring, slow build. If you have guys that can go, that's what you want. A slow build is, think modern day New Japan. You're going to just kind of get off to a slow start, back and forth, both guys working, some rest holds, yada yada. As the match goes on and builds towards the end, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter until the very end of the match when you got guys bouncing off and it just builds and builds and builds and builds to a major climax, and then it's over. It's useful in long matches between skilled competitors. That's key. This one has to go longer than about 15 minutes. Has to be longer than 15 minutes. I do all my slow builds, I do more than 20 minutes. Anything over 20 minutes. Using this note reduces the stamina requirements for workers, and it reduces them. Why? Because they start off slow and they're conserving energy. Good in-ring performances by workers with high psychology are enhanced by it. Poor in-ring performances with low psychology will create penalties. 15 minutes and under are too short. So basically, again, good in-ring workers with high psychology. You notice a trend? Good in-ring workers, high psychology. That helps everything. If you're trying to figure out who should be one of your next hirings, find a guy with good psychology. Psychology helps everything. Pretty much every one of these road notes is reliant on psychology. It's huge in this game. But slow build is my favorite one. Slow build is my favorite match style for my main events. You can bet my pay-per-view main events, open match, call it in the ring, slow build. 99% of them. 99%. The only time I've scripted, I did script my Royal Rumble main event, Undertaker versus Jericho. I did script that match because Undertaker was only at a 74 psychology, and I can't see what Jericho's psychology is yet because I got the Fog of War on, and I don't have enough. I haven't put him in enough matches yet to see all of his stats. Overbook Vince Russo. Think about it that way. It's intentionally overbooked. It's full of twists, turns, run-ins, blood, weapons, basically organized mayhem, and it's useful for hiding the flaws of poor in-ring performances, as the crowd just doesn't have time to think about how bad specific workers are doing. But it limits good in-ring performers from doing their best. Some crowds will hate this match. If you got New Japan, don't ever use overbook. Basically, if you have a popularity over performance, overbook is okay. Performance over popularity product, overbook is not okay. I never use the overbook. I have used it actually once or twice. But generally, if you've got a match with guys who can't really wrestle, you might want to overbook it. Excuse me, I'm yawning here. Hurricane Maxwell did not want to go to bed tonight. She gave me quite a hard time. So I'm recording this later than usual. But that's why. So overbook. Less important if you got workers who are not quite as good. You're gonna want to use overbook. Your three types of finishes: decisive win, tainted win, and cheap win. Decisive, clean victory. I would say 90% of my matches are decisive wins. Tainted wins. This means that it's not quite a clean win. So somebody lost, but they have a legitimate reason why they lost. Titles will change hands with this. This is basically guy got rolled up. It's a Jerry Lawler match. Jerry Lawler rolls a guy up and puts his feet on the ropes while he pins him, or he pulls the tights to pin him. or he hits a low blow and rolls him up. It's something that basically, if he did something illegal but the ref didn't see it, that's a tainted win. A cheap win means he got the win because he got disqualified or a count out. This is one where titles will not change hands. So DQs, count outs, run-ins, whatever, are cheap wins. That's the difference between a tainted win and a cheap win. Don't confuse those. A tainted win, think of tainted as illegal but didn't get caught. Cheap win, illegal, got caught, essentially. And titles won't change hands on cheap wins unless you override that rule. And again, some fans will be upset. Some fans will be upset by a cheap win. Some fan bases like clean victories. But those are your three types of finishes. You're going to use decisive winning most often. I use a lot of tainted wins on my TV shows. My pay-per-views are all decisive wins, almost all the time. Exact finishes, we're not going to get into all of these because there's a lot of them, like a lot. But basically, your exact finish, it's just how you can tell the game exactly what kind of finish you want. Pinfall, flash pinfall, submission, count out, intentional count out, DQ, intentional DQ, on and on and on and on. The only one that I want to point out are things like outside interference, distraction. So a distraction, you have to specify who's the wrestler getting distracted and who's the guy doing the distracting. You have to specify that. And I want to point out a sports entertainment finish. A sports entertainment finish is officially a draw. It just means that I'll do this one if I'm doing like a gang warfare or a stable war, and maybe in the middle of the match, both stables came running out to the ring, and it's just mayhem in the ring, and the ref doesn't know who got attacked first and who did what, so he just calls the match off. It's a draw because everything descended into mayhem. It's officially a draw. What I wanted to point out outside interference for, right? Outside interference. When you select this one, you also have to scroll down to external involvement and set the interference. Who was the worker that got interfered with? Not the one who was helped, the one who got interfered with, and who was the interference run-in, who did the run-in. Alright, so those have to be together. Otherwise, the game might be sort of like, it says, you must set the road agent note to the... So yeah, basically, your exact finishes, that's just telling the game exactly what you want to finish. I'm notorious, if you watch the rest of my shows, I'm notorious for not doing this, and then having to sort of correct it on the fly. I'm notorious for doing things like not setting it to be a pinfall finish, and then getting ridiculous scenarios like Chris Jericho tapping out Vader with a lion tamer, when there's no way Jericho ever gets the lion tamer on Vader, and there's no way Vader taps out to it. But now I've got Vader tapping out at WrestleMania to Chris Jericho's lion tamer. So make sure you set those. Don't be like me. Your external involvement, it's just basically setting, your botched interference if you want there to be botched interference. This is if somebody ran in trying to help Billy Gunn, but instead accidentally hit Billy Gunn, you would do a botched interference. You could cost Billy Gunn the match that way. Distraction is what it is. Replacement referee just says if you want a specific referee to make a run-in and replace the referee that was already in it. That could be anybody here. You could pick any worker. And then special extras, allow spinal impact moves. If you have spinal impact move banned, you could allow it for one match just by setting this. You can also ban it for one match doing this. The only ones here that you'll use, end storyline. You can choose the storyline that ends with this match. I almost never use this, mainly because I just forget about it. It does the exact same thing as if you just ended the show and then went into the storyline page and manually ended it. It does the same thing. There's no benefit to ending a storyline. It doesn't improve the... it doesn't improve the rating because the fans know, oh, that's the end of the storyline. It doesn't do anything like that. It's just an extra place where you can end the storyline. So generally, I just end them on the storyline page. You will use a turn, though. If you're going to break up a tag team, you could have your worker turn during the match. If you want somebody to turn during the match, and worker is the person getting beat up, turning is the person turning. So you can do a run-in, whatever you want to do. You're basically just telling the game to turn somebody. Crazy Bump and Stunt Bump. I don't really use these, but they are exactly what they say they are. This is telling someone to take a crazy bump. It'll add a memorable moment, pop the crowd, so it could increase the rating of the match, but it has a huge risk of injury. And Stunt Bump, spectacular launch, it'll be through a specially gimmicked part of the ring or arena, making it safer than a crazy bump. So it's useful for providing a memorable moment, popping the crowd, but despite the precautions, still presents some risk of injury. So again, Stunt Bump is the same thing as Crazy Bump, just a little bit safer. I never use these. I just don't. You will find that if you try and use them, some workers will refuse. So some workers won't take a Crazy Bump. Unmask, it is what it is. You can unmask a wrestler. Lose his hair, same thing. Overwrite title change rules. This one's important if you have a situation where, hey, if you get disqualified, you'll still lose the title, right? Maybe your storyline is, The Undertaker just keeps getting himself disqualified so he doesn't lose the title. So basically, The Undertaker has defended his title 4 times. He's lost all 4 matches, but he lost them all by disqualification. Right? You got maybe a heel who's a cheating heel who just continues to do this, and you want your storyline to be, if you get disqualified, you lose your title, right? You can do that by overriding the title change rules. So you can have the challenger win by disqualification and set overwrite title change rules, and it will allow the challenger to win by DQ and also become the new champion. Screwjob, it's the Montreal Screwjob option. If you watch our Vinny's World, we did do this. It's fun, but it royally fucks your morale in your locker room. A lot of guys will quit over it. A lot of guys, it's gonna ding you. Use this as your last resort. We all know in real life, the Montreal Screwjob turned out to be one of the greatest things that WWF ever did, unfortunately for Brett. It ended up helping the company. Very rarely is it going to help your company in this game. But if you got a guy, leave him with the title, and he won't take a loss, hey, you do what you got to do, right? I don't really ever use this, mainly because of what it does to the morale of the locker room. I find that it's never worth it, especially given that you can theoretically do this in an angle, right? Like, the new version, 2016, TEW 2016 lets you do a title change through an angle. So you can, it's designed so that, like, okay, this guy is, forfeiting the title, and we're going to give it to this guy. That's what that's really designed for. But you can sort of game the system a little bit, and instead of doing a match, you can just do a segment. Let's say it's HBK versus Bret Hart. You can make that an angle, and it can be a 15-minute angle where you do a screw job, quote, air quote, screw job, in the angle, and you give the belt to Shawn Michaels. And then for storyline purposes, you've screwed Bret, you screwed Bret Hart, HBK has the title, Bret leaves for WCW the next night. Storyline-wise. But morale-wise, it doesn't take the hit. It doesn't put the hit on your backstage morale that a screw job would. So, yeah, there's that. It's gamey, but, I'll be the first one to say, and I think most TEW players will agree, that the coolest thing about TEW is that there's no such thing as cheating. You play the game the way you want to play it. You run the world the way you want to run it. There's no such thing as cheating. If you want to go in and manually change guys' stats to make them better, you can go in and manually change guys' stats. It's about creating a wrestling world that you can sort of live in and you can experience, and that has a living, breathing feel to it. And if doing a screw job through an angle, if you don't want to sacrifice the morale hit, then do it through an angle. And no one's going to hold that against you. No one's going to wring your neck. That's about it for Road Agent notes. There's not a whole lot more to talk about. A lot of the Road Agent notes, honestly, is just playing the game. Play the game, tinker with them, experience each one, see what they do, see which ones you like, which ones you don't like. You'll find combinations of ones that you like. For me, it's open match, call it in the ring, slow build. You find little ones that work best for your product and for your guys and for your taste in wrestling. Everyone has different tastes. I'm not a fan of ECW, so I don't do many wild brawls. I don't do many car crashes, high spots. It's just not my cup of tea. But you might love those matches, and so you build your company so you build your company, with a product along those lines, and you use those quite frequently. What do you got in mail here? Oh, TV rating 3.5, sweet. So that's it, guys. That's kind of what I got. Hope you guys found this informative. It was, honestly, this is a little bit of a tougher one for me because I don't use a whole lot of road agent notes. I don't. I find that the game does a pretty damn good job of honing in on what each worker's good at and making that work. The only time I'm going to use them is if I really, really specifically want to see The Undertaker and Stone Cold duke it out, brawl it out. Then I might suggest set it as a wild brawl. But I really find that the game does a pretty good job of focusing in on what each wrestler does best and honing the match to that. So I find that they're not super, super necessary. And in my experience, if you don't get it right, you get dinged pretty heavily. So my experience is that the positive rewards are smaller than the negative dings. And so I just, generally I stick with the basic match aims. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If there's anything else you guys want me to do it on, let me know. I really do enjoy doing the Let's Learns. I love talking about TEW. It's arguably my favorite game of all time. I can't believe that I didn't know it existed until, 5 years ago I think I discovered it. I can't believe that I didn't know it even existed. TEW is the game that I have always dreamed of. It's the business management aspect, the booking, the fantasy. I love it, and I love talking about it, and I love having conversations about it and sharing my knowledge about it, because it's just one of those games that, even 5 years in, I'm still learning new things. There's still so much about this game that I don't know, and talking through it, doing the Let's Learns for new players, just talking through it, I'll discover new things that I didn't know, and I really enjoy kind of making it so that this is bothering me crazy. I really enjoy helping new players learn a little bit about the game, and because it can be very, very overwhelming. It can be really overwhelming, and so if I can help out a new player a little bit, get into it and pick it up and run with it, then that's awesome. So guys, that's gonna do it for tonight. I know I've said that about 3 or 4 times, but this really is gonna do it. It's about 11:30. I'm getting ready for bed here. Let me get this edited up, pop it up on the YouTube for all you for your viewing pleasure. And guys, listen, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and click subscribe, because you don't want to miss the 200 subscriber celebratory Greatest Wrestler Ever tournament. I know I'm plugging it before, I'm plugging it again, I'm going to plug it on every one of my videos. You don't want to miss that. You want to win $50. Who doesn't want to win $50? Shoot me an email, guys. It's bookitbetter@gmail.com. If you have any questions or requests, you can shoot me an email there, bookitbetter@gmail.com. If you want to request a bracket when they come out, when they get released, I will send you a bracket. I'm also going to be putting it up on challenge.com. You can just go to challenge.com. I'll put the link down. Once we get the bracket up, I will put a link to the challenge with that. You can do your predictions all on there. You don't have to have a paper bracket. But if you like paper brackets, I'll send you a paper bracket. Again, that email is bookitbetter@gmail.com. If you like what you saw here and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Get subscribed. What's the matter with you? If you didn't like what you saw here, go take a hike. I don't care. But subscribe before you leave. because subscriptions make me feel good. But yeah. So guys, I'm excited. I'm excited about getting this up. I'm excited about the tournament. I'm excited about going to WrestleMania. But while I'm on that note, the next couple episodes that go up for this are either going to be Let's Learns or creative meetings. But we're going to get working on that tournament. So WWF Classic might take a halt. So it's definitely going to take a halt in terms of shows, because I got to do a couple of creative meetings before I can do any more shows anyway. I am still going to try and get 3 days a week content up. Ideally that'll be the creative meetings. But it'll also be the prep work, I think, for the Book It Better tournament. So if I miss a day or two, that's why. If I'm gone for a week or so, it's because we're working on getting the studio set up for those videos. Remember, we really, really want to pull out all the stops here. So I want to get this studio in tip-top shape. I got to get a green screen in here. There's a lot of stuff that's got to go into it. But I really want to have that going. I really want it to be kind of an epic thing. So that's what's going on if we fall behind a day or two with that. But I do plan on getting the creative meetings up for WWF Classic. And if I can get a couple episodes of WWF Classic up, then that's great too. But start looking out shortly for information on the Book It Better 200 subscribers celebratory tournament. I know you want that $50. Guys, I'm blabbing, I'm chatting. I don't know how to end this video. I know how to end my shows. I don't know how to end the Let's Learns. So go on out of here. Get out of here. Go have a good night. I will see you right back here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as always. Not always, sometimes. But at least 3 days a week, I will see you back here. Get out of here. I'm out of here. I will see you when I see you.